Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's December 22nd, 2021. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined as always by our managing editor, Matt Shodell, as we discuss the news of the day. And Matt, I'm getting to like this COVID Matt Shodell, who's been quarantining in his house.
It's basically over. I'm at the end of my quarantine.
No, it can't be over.
I tested negative. I already tested negative twice. Like, my wife's basically
So much
heard
more
things over tomorrow.
When you're secluded to the office of your house, you get so much more work done.
I mean, look, I haven't been only in my house. Okay, the rules are, if you test positive, you really should quarantine. I just was out of an abundance of caution, staying away from people. You know me, I'm usually at the club every night, partying during the day. So I cut back on that a little bit, and but starting tomorrow, it's back to the partying, bro. It's gonna be crazy.
Oh, man. Hey, I was just talking to some guy in Nebraska, and he was telling me that he lives in Omaha, and he was saying that that's like the last city in Nebraska that protocols are being lifted. I'm like, lifted? I'm like, down here in South Florida, they're being brought back in the way this thing is spiking and everybody's getting it. And apparently in Nebraska, it's going down. I don't understand how they're pulling that off. I guess because everybody's so spread out to begin with, possibly. But yeah, so he was real psyched because, he's not into this whole mask thing and all that. Like, some people aren't, depending for whatever reason on their political interests, seem to have a lot to do with it. But that's a whole nother subject. But anyway, let's talk about the news of the day. And it's all about recruiting today, quite frankly. And I just continue to love what we're seeing from Mario Cristobal and Alex Mirabal, Batman and Robin. They are just assaulting offensive linemen all over America.
I thought we were Batman and Robin. Hey,
listen, they keep recruiting like this. I think everybody would be comfortable with us sharing those labels, nicknames, whatever you want to call it, because these two guys are flat going at it on the recruiting trail. And I want to talk first about a four-star offensive tackle from Indiana by name of Luke Burgess. And this is a kid that was being recruited a little bit to Oregon. And so he calls Alex Mirabal, totally unaware that Alex Mirabal is coming to Mario Cristobal's staff at Miami, calls Alex Mirabal to schedule an official visit to Oregon. And within a couple minutes, Alex Mirabal has him lined up to visit Miami. And now he's a Miami recruit. And just typical of the way these guys are recruiting. And there's a little bit of a rub that you'll see when you read the story today on Luke Burgess, is that Maddie has a sister in Orlando. And boy, those family connections in Florida, they never hurt.
Everyone has a relative in Miami or in Orlando
Right.
or in Florida, I mean, look, the truth is half the recruits I talk to, they mention some other recruit or some person I know, and they say it's their brother or it's their cousin. And I'm like, listen, is it really your brother? And they're like, no. I'm like, is it really your cousin? They're like, no. But they feel like it's family, and this actually is his sister. This doesn't just feel like his sister. So it's real family. But, the funny thing is, like, I'm sure those of you that aren't reporters, like, you just see the stories. You don't really think about how we do the interviews. But, like, you got to picture this. I call the kid. Obviously, this is not an in-person contact with an out-of-state kid like that. And I never talked to the kid before. Nice kid. I said, I saw you got an offer. Congratulations. How many offers you got? He tells me. I said, so walk me through how you got the offer. And then just totally matter-of-factly, he walks me through how he called, they shared it. They texted, then he called Mirabal, and then the whole conversation. Totally matter-of-factly, like this is an everyday thing. I've never heard a story like this in 30 years covering the team, okay, where within, he finishes the whole story. I don't interrupt him at all because that's not, how you're supposed to do an interview. And then after he finishes, I said, just so I'm clear, I said, you called Alex Mirabal to set up an Oregon visit, and 10 minutes later you would set up a Miami visit? And the kid goes, yes, that's what I did. Just like that. Yes, that's what I did. Like, it was just normal. Like, just run of the mill. This happens all the time. But I'm like, okay, So this is one of those even Steven kids, like go with the flow kids. Like, I don't even think it really like, how when you grow up with your family and you're young, your parents could be the weirdest parents in the world, but you think it's normal because you've never seen anything else. And then like eventually you get out of that play date phase and you actually sleep over at someone's house as a teenager or whatever, one of your buddies, and you see how their family is at dinner and how they interact. And you're like, man, my family's weird. Like this kid has no, and I'm not talking about my family, by the way. My family is a little weird, but so is every family. But like for this kid, this was just normal because he doesn't know any different. Like he's just starting the recruiting process. Like he thinks it's normal to call a coach to set up a visit to one school, and the coach says, hey, I'm at a different school now, come visit me there, and be like, okay, like that's perfectly normal to this kid, I've never heard this ever happen in 30 years. Like I was flabbergasted. I didn't want to show the kid how flabbergasted I was on the phone call, so I just moved along with the conversation. But like this is not normal, and kudos to Alex Mirabal to somehow, like I can't picture exactly what was going through Alex Mirabal's head when this kid calls Alex, hey coach, I want to come visit you at Oregon. When can I come up? And the coach is like, I'm at Miami now. Why don't you come visit Miami? Like, I don't know exactly what was going through Mirabal's head, but it must have struck him as kind of funny too at some point. I don't know how much convincing he had to do to get the kid to come to Miami, but it doesn't sound like he had to do a lot of convincing because this kid's like, I already have the plan. I'm coming to see my sister in Orlando in March. At the end of March, that's when I'm coming down to Miami. It's going to be great. And, the key for all these kids out of state is get them on campus. Get them on campus. Get them on campus. Get them around the coaches. Get them around the team. Get them around the players. And then get them back on campus in the fall for official visits. And, like, if that all goes well, this is how you get these 4-star kids from out of state to come to Miami.
Take them to the student union pool. That helps a little bit.
What? That's not where I take the kids.
Yeah, and the new dorms and the campus and all that. And, yeah, man.
Thank God you're not in charge of the official visits. If you think that's the best part of the official visit,
I could tell some stories in that regard too, but I won't. We'll move on to the next subject.
That's when those things were allowed back in your day, Gary. That stuff's not allowed anymore. You can't go to the strip clubs anymore. Like that doesn't work.
But you can go to the student union pool.
What were those? They actually had a team of girls that they called them Cane something or others that would actually be in charge.
Hurricane Honeys.
What were they called?
The Hurricane Honeys.
Can you imagine now in this culture nowadays having Hurricane Honeys showing around a bunch of recruits and showing them a good time?
They still have them. They just don't go by the same name.
No. They would be would be canceled. They would be canceled.
Seriously, you think they don't have cute girls that show the kids around campus?
You can't call them. You can't even say to a girl, "Hey, honey," like that's derogatory.
They don't have to have the same name, but they can have the same function.
It's like watching an old movie. You can't do those things anymore. You could say, "Oh, you can still make a movie about that subject," but you can't have these scenes in the movie. You're saying those scenes are okay in the movie? No, those scenes are not okay in the movie anymore. I'm sorry. It's a different time.
Now, trust me, they're okay in the movie. I guarantee you there's cute girls showing recruits around campus.
I listen, okay.
But they're not, there's no doubt in my mind. Yeah, and I also guarantee you that there's cute girls hanging out at the student union pool.
You're not understanding.
And I'll also guarantee you that the student union pool is part of the itinerary on the campus tour.
Okay, but South Beach is on the tour. You're missing the whole point. No strip clubs. No Hurricane Honeys. Those are the old days. That's what you were talking about when you said, I can tell you some stories. What I'm trying to tell you is your stories are obsolete, Gary. We're old, okay? You and I are old.
We ain't that old. I'm telling you. Trust me.
There's
good-looking girls doing the campus tours, and there's good-looking girls laying at the pool when the campus tour goes by the pool. I feel confident about that. All right. And there aren't many campuses around the United States that have that whole vibe going on their campuses. And I think that's still an edge for Miami. All right. Hey, I want to talk about this other kid. Oklahoma commit. Okay. A kid by the name of Joshua Bates. Okay. Now this kid says he's 100% committed to Oklahoma. You guys will see it in the story today. 100% committed to Oklahoma. But hey, a trip down to Miami, don't
try to make sexy faces. Listen, I'm gonna take myself off the screen and try to make sexy faces like that. I'm like over this. This is not for me.
I could take you off the screen myself. So this kid, Joshua Bates, okay, he's saying that he's gonna take a trip to Miami despite his 100% commitment to Oklahoma. So that'll be interesting. He will be setting that up at some point. And yes, Cristobal and Mirabal are recruiting him as well. Are you ready?
Oh, Mario, I got to go. Gary just put me back on the screen. Yeah, Mario. Okay, see you. You missed a great conversation with somebody you may or may not know very closely about. He was telling me all about how he does not take recruits to the pool anymore. He says that's old school. That's for losers from back in the day. They will not do that anymore. I can't tell you who I was talking to, but they said what you said is like for old people. That's
All right, whatever. But I was talking about Joshua Bates, who is 100% committed to Oklahoma, and he is going to come visit Miami. Despite all that, despite the fact that he can't be swayed off of Oklahoma, he will still come down and check it out just to meet Mirabal and Cristobal, the Ball brothers, Batman, Robin, whatever you want to call them. So we'll have that visit to look forward to here at some point. Probably what, Matt? Like early spring, maybe, I would think. These 2023 kids will start making their way through campus in the springtime, I would guess. And that'll be interesting as well.
Okay, I guess I won't add anything. Okay, go ahead. Move on. No, you don't want to hear from me. So why would I do that?
Go ahead.
It's Gary all about Ferman, you now. It's a Gary Ferman morning CaneSport, apparently. So I was going to add, again, I don't know if people enjoy these stupid backstories or not. I enjoy telling them, so now you have to listen to it. So when I called this kid, talked to this kid, and got the whole story, which you'll read on CaneSport this morning. I'm not going to rehash the whole story. But after I hung up the phone with the kid, I called Gary and said, listen, I don't even know if we should run this story. Like, this kid's like, he told me I'm 100% committed to Alabama. I said, but then like later on, he's like, well, I want to visit Miami. Like, I'm like, is this even a story? I said, and then, talking with Gary, I guess we sort of came to a joint decision that really the story here, and which you didn't mention yet, is that Mario Cristobal, unlike past coaches, is willing to spend time, even at this early point, on a kid who's already committed somewhere else, who no doubt has told Mario he's committed to Oklahoma and is 100% with Oklahoma. But you just don't give up on these kids. And I don't care that he's rated a 3-star by Rivals, whatever. He's got big-time offers. Miami obviously loves, Mirabal likes what he sees in this kid, and he wants him. And, you don't give up on these kids. We've seen so many coaches in the past who are like, okay, this kid's committed, forget him, move to the next. And, they don't even try. And when you get a coach who is a vampire and only sleeps in a box for 2 hours a night, you can go after these people because you've got these extra 8 hours in your day that can be spent where, I don't want to name any past coaches, but where they didn't have the time, ability, wherewithal, or desire to try and chase these guys. Now you open this whole world of possibilities where it's not just guys you think you can get that you want, but guys that you think you can't get that you can stay on. And if there's a coaching change in Oklahoma, this guy's going to remember you, and you're going to, and Mario's not going to drop this kid. Miami used to give out an offer and then not talk to a kid for 3 or 4 months. Okay, you have an offer. That was it. I don't think Mario's going to do that. We'll find out. Because I'm going to be following up with all these kids every few weeks and, what's going on with Miami, blah, blah, and we'll find out. But I have a feeling it's not going to be like the past, we call them regimes. I don't know if that's mainly for dictators, but I don't know if it's going to be like past regimes where, hey, you have an offer, you talk to the coach, great, and then you don't hear from him for 3 months. I highly doubt that's how Mario Cristobal runs his ship here.
All right. Another story we have today is the Mike Harley blog. It's been a couple weeks since we've heard from Mike. And since then, Matt, he's graduated. He's decided he's going to play in the bowl game, even though, he's basically done at Miami. He doesn't want to miss his last bowl game, and just expounds on so many different subjects. So I really encourage everybody to take a look at that Mike Harley blog today, where he talks about things like missing coaches at practice, the future at Miami, how they found out that Manny Diaz was fired and Mario Cristobal was coming in. He talks a little bit about recruiting. Gives us his take on Van Dyke and Garcia, and drops a little dime on who he thinks is going to be the best receiver on the team next year, and all of that. So really a lot of different subjects covered in this week's Mike Harley blog. We urge everybody to look at that. We also have our Canes.
Again, you don't. I can't weigh in at all anymore. This is it.
You want to talk about Harley? Go ahead.
Why am I even on here?
Good. Talk about Harley. Go ahead.
I want to know why I'm on here. What am I supposed to do?
Did I leave anything uncovered there?
Well, a little bit, yeah. If you want me to add something, I will.
Go ahead.
So I did get a chance to catch up with Mike a little bit, post interview as well as part of the blog and following up and all that. And I just asked him. I said, "Listen, I know you're friendly with Tyreek Stevenson, and like, have you had a chance to talk to him at all about, some people are saying he's definitely coming back, and then you hear, well, there's people trying to convince him not to come back." And Mike says he talked to Tyreek, and but you don't want to hear about this, so let's move on. I won't tell you what Tyreek's doing. Go ahead, Gary.
I think Tyreek's coming back.
Mike said Tyreek 100% is coming back.
Yeah, he's got to come back.
And then I said to Mike, I said, like 100%, like it's done. And he said, well, pretty much. Yeah, so this is like a huge deal for Miami. Huge deal. I mean, without Tyreek, you probably got to bring in a couple of cornerback transfers, and now you really need one more good guy, and you got a couple of recruits already in, and maybe add another in 2022, in February for the 2022 class, just to be safe. But like that's as big, like that to me is a bigger deal than Jaleel Skinner. I mean, no one's going to say that or agree with that. But in terms of next year, like it's a home run compared to Jaleel Skinner. Like you don't need Jaleel Skinner to win next year. You need Tyreek Stevenson to win next year. And it's important to win next year. Why? Because if you don't win next year, you lose all those freaking recruits you worked so hard to get from South Florida. You've got to win. Make the Coastal next year. Avoid the negativity from the fans. It's just killed recruiting all year last year. That's why he's way more important than Jaleel Skinner, because Tyreek Stevenson could be the difference between landing a top 2023 class, because he will help a suspect cornerback position that otherwise could be picked apart. So Tyreek, thank you for saving the future of Miami Hurricanes football.
All right, we also have our Canes in the NFL feature on the website today. And lastly, Matt, I think we should talk a little bit about the story that actually came out last night about, from what we hear, 4 or 5 Hurricane football players have tested positive for COVID. The whole team is in COVID protocols. They're trying really hard to keep this thing from spreading. They even having socially distanced practices and things like that. Not real conducive to getting ready for a football game, but I guess they feel it's more important that they get to show up for the football game. So that's going on. And Matt, were you able to figure out what these COVID protocols are? I started reading it. I'm like, Jesus, this seems like real complicated.
The protocols need to change. It's not like it was before, February, January, February, March. Like it's not quite as scary now. There's different treatments. It seems like the symptoms in that age group aren't quite as bad. And yeah, of course you don't want to bring it home to your family, for sure. But if you're fully vaccinated, if you have a booster and you test positive, I have a couple of physicians. Actually, I have 4 physicians are in my family. Okay. Actually 5, if you include my sister-in-law. So I talk to them all the time about it. I'm not a doctor, but from what I'm hearing, they're going to be changing the CDC is very slow to act, and I have a feeling they're going to change. Right now it's a 7-day quarantine if you're fully vaccinated and test positive. And I have a feeling they're going to change that to 5 in the very near future. And for some places it already is 5, and for some places it's actually 3, because if it's a healthcare worker, and they need people to work, it just seems like people right now aren't in the hospital or dying from it like they were. But at the same time, if there's too many kids that test positive, how do you travel?
But let me ask you a question. So these guidelines, they say that if you are identified through contract.
Right now it's 7 days. Right now, everyone who tested positive on the team is 7 days. The problem is, did it spread to other players on the team? And we're not going to know, because there's a 3 to 10 day incubation potentially.
And what are these 10 and 14 day guidelines they have for quarantine?
That's if you're not. I think that's if you're not vaccinated. But here's the point: if they get on that plane and they're in that window for a ton of kids who had close contact with those kids who are positive, and those kids wind up testing positive, at the bowl game, they're stuck there. They're stuck there for 7 to 10 days, sitting in
going to Alcatraz, man. Getting stuck in El Paso, Texas. Oh my God!
And does Miami want to risk that for what I consider a meaningless bowl game? Maybe it's not meaningless. To me, the bowl games like this have always been about the practices. And right now they can barely practice. They're doing walkthroughs and just individual tackling drills, socially distanced and stuff like that. That's not practicing. That's not preparing for a game. If they need to travel, I think, when do they travel? In just a few days.
I think right after Christmas. Yeah.
Yeah, and I know they said we're dead.
Maybe this is a way to get out of playing in the Sun Bowl.
Well, they say we're committed to playing. Blah blah blah.
I know.
Like, do you need to play the game? I don't know. Like, is there a benefit for Miami to play this game? I don't know.
I don't think there is.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there is.
I mean, if I'm Mario Cristobal, the last thing you need is what happened to Derek King in the last bowl game. Like, a meaningless bowl game. Like, yeah, get your practices in if you can, and then cancel the freaking bowl game. Like, I don't need to. Like, I haven't even, honestly. I was joking with with Harley about this. I'm like, it's funny. Like, I haven't even thought about Washington State. Like, so much has been going on the last 2 weeks, and he says to me, same here. He's like, we haven't even started preparing for Washington State at all. We're just doing like walkthrough and individual drills. Like, we haven't even looked at film. Like, just on my own, I've been looking at some of their guys, but like, we haven't started preparing for them. Like, it's like, this is not about Washington State, and it shouldn't be. It should be about getting Miami better for next season. And if you can accomplish that without having 10 kids stuck out in El Paso after the bowl game because they test positive, like, I'm all for that. I'll let smarter people than me decide, but I would not be upset if they didn't travel and play in the bowl game just for health reasons. And I don't think that affects the team whatsoever. And if anything, it might avoid having, an unfortunate injury to anybody. Like, you don't want to see that happen in a bowl game period, but especially a meaningless bowl game. And we've seen it happen so many times in these bowl games, So like, yeah, I'm fine with it, All
right, so we'll continue to monitor that situation on campus here in the coming hours and days, and it'll be interesting to see whether the Canes actually can get on the plane and go to El Paso, and they will play against Washington State on New Year's Eve day. We'll continue to watch as Batman and Robin are a two-man wrecking crew going around the nation, swarming any offensive lineman that comes in their way and trying to convince them to become Miami Hurricanes. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. Hope you enjoy all the content on the site. For Matt Shodell, I'm Gary Ferman. We thank you for joining us, and have a great day, everybody.